Welcome back all. I'm nearly there, setting up the optimum podcast area. I've managed to get the Bonneville within touching distance. But if I have some press bikes, I want to figure out the best way where I can show off the Bonneville and press bikes in the background, just for an extra bit of visual appeal. You can also pick up, if you fancy, a copy of our book, The Lost Biker Stories, charting some of the history of motorcycling stories from the 50s all the way through to the 1980s, everywhere from the UK, USA, California, and in between. Right, let's get down to it. Thank you so much, everyone, as ever, for continuing to get in touch and sharing your thoughts and opinions. Best place to do so, comment section below. And if you have a longer story, maybe with some pictures, please do email hi@tuesday@dobbs.com. It's massively appreciated. I've got so much to get through. Usually I set up about 4 pages for myself to talk through. I've got 6 today because I couldn't squeeze it down anymore. There's so much I want to discuss. So let's begin. Buell. I think I chatted about this maybe a few months ago, but it's building steam now. And once Evo T9B said, Freddie, have you ever done a video on Buells? I thought, right, that's it. Because I was at Paulson Creative last week. I think on Thursday or Friday to get the tyres changed on the Bonneville. There's a video for that coming out this week. And we were chatting and Stu, the owner of Paulson Creative, he said, do you know that Buell is genuinely coming back? As in they're starting to look for distributors around Europe as well. So this isn't just a small thing they're doing only in the USA. They want to potentially go big and re-establish themselves. And this really caught something inside of me thinking, can you imagine if one of the other great American brands of motorcycles coming back? We're getting so many of these British and European brands back, which is amazing. It'd be great to have one more American one back. So let's give ourselves a recap on this. Buell Motorcycles, founded 1983. I can hear every motorbike going past because it's about 2 meters that way and 2 meters that way, and it's a glorious day and everyone's out enjoying themselves. 1983, they were founded by ex-Harley-Davidson engineer Eric Buell. They initially, and predominantly still do, build race motorcycles. That's how they started, and a lot of their bikes, I believe, were using the V-twin engine from the Harley-Davidson Sportster. Harley-Davidson then in 1993 acquired 49% of Buell, and then by 2003, Harley-Davidson owned 100% of Buell. However, in 2009, Harley-Davidson discontinued the entire Buell range, and really that's the end of the Buell story, at least for a bit, as we knew it, because Harley-Davidson wanted to focus on the core Harley-Davidson motorbikes. However, in February 2021, Buell Motorcycles announced that motorcycle production had returned under the ownership of Eric Buell Racing. Right, history lesson done. Let's have a look. These will definitely be coming to Europe. This is not a pipe dream, it's happening. Let me show you 2 of their key models here. Maybe my 2 favorite models. Bear in mind, these bikes are US bikes built in Michigan, USA. They are through and through American bikes. So the Americans here should be very proud of this. I'll start off with the Hammerhead 1190. Don't you just love this? The Americans, first off, they come up with the best motorcycle, the best vehicle names, full stop, ever. And the Hammerhead 1190, it sounds like one of those names from the glory years of American vehicle production, the 1950s, the 1960s, when first and foremost, the Americans cared about things connecting from an emotive element. They had to be the most incredible looking machines. They had to grab you from your soul. And this, just purely as a name, have you ever heard of a better name than the Hammerhead? This comes from Buell's website. Born from decades of American grit and racing heritage, the Buell Hammerhead 1190 is built for those who demand more from every ride. This isn't a sport bike, or it isn't just a sports bike. It's an unbreakable bond between rider and machine, forged on the track, there's that track reference, and perfected on American soil. With every twist of the throttle, the Hammerhead 1190 channels relentless power, precision, and passion. Engineered for those who live to push the limits and chase the thrill, lap after lap. I believe this is the most powerful sports bike that has ever been produced on American soil. I think I'm right with that. Let's just go through the specs before I ogle over the looks. 1190 V-twin liquid cooled, 185 horsepower, full carbon fibre body, 190 kilograms. Need I say more? Look at the pics. Shark fins, hence the name Hammerhead. This is for sale in the USA, 21 to 27,000 US dollars. And that translates to 14 to 15,000 British pounds. Of course, look, it's going to be more. There are all these really, really frustrating taxes and duties, yada, yada, yada. I don't know what it's going to cost when it gets to us in Europe, Australia, further afield. But in the USA, 14 to 15,000. And if we just take that, we don't talk about any sales taxes because it's different in every state. That is not bad at all for an American-built, liquid-cooled V-twin sports bike with 185 horsepower. And someone tell me if I'm wrong. Is this not one of the best-looking sports bikes you have ever seen? Those fins on the side. They've done a superb job with this. I'll do one other one here. This is a super naked type bike, so it may have a slightly broader appeal here. Almost exactly the same specs as the Hammerhead. It's got the 1190 V-twin liquid cooled, 185 horsepower, similar weight, $20,000 to $26,000. So very, very slightly cheaper. Here's what Buell say. Built for those who live and breathe the thrill, the Buell 1190 SX brings raw superbike power and relentless precision to the streets. With racing heritage pulsing through every carbon fibre, this machine is your partner in carving up open roads and commanding cityscapes. The 1190 SX isn't just a high-performance bike, it's a declaration of loyalty to the road and an invitation to unleash your untamed spirit, mile after mile. The 2025 Buell 1190 SX has been updated with full carbon fibre bodywork and improved ergonomics, including high bars, lower pegs and handmade seats. Optional sport touring accessories coming soon. This is going to be a compelling package. If these make it to European soil and further afield, which they will, and if the package can be in and around the competitive area, it really does depend what the taxes and duties do when it's brought over. But if they can just be relatively competitive, there will always be a market for these because, look, it's going to be on the niche end of the spectrum and there will always be people who want something slightly different from the traditional British and Japanese offerings. And this offers something very, very different. I really hope Buell does well here. I hope they get an established network of dealers that sell their bikes over the next 6 months to a year or so. And they start to get a foothold in different markets around the world because everything they're doing here, I think, is the right kind of thing for a motorcycle brand to be successful and they deserve it. So fingers crossed for them. On to some slightly bad news. Fantic in trouble. This is from Jason. Freddie, I'm sure you've heard about the potential issues at Fantic. Always terrible to hear of a bike manufacturer in distress. This, pictured here, this may give an insight into one of those issues though, and this is from Jason. Okay, Jason, let's open this up. So you've sent me 2 pics here. One is of the Fantic Caballero Deluxe 500, £6,549. It's a perfectly fair price. Next up is the Fantic e-bike 2023 carbon at £7,500. Okay, so it's £1,000 more for an e-bike than it is for a motorcycle. I guess it is made with carbon, but you know, to have an e-bike at more than a motorcycle, that is quite interesting. So Jason, you seem to think that is the cause of their problems. Let's take a look at this from paddock-gp.com. This is really interesting here. Italian icon Fantic Motor is reeling under a colossal €136 million debt. Like KTM, the manufacturer placed a big bet on electric bikes and scooters. That's a gamble that turned into a nightmare, with its motorcycles like the Caballero 500 and Enduro XCF 450 continuing to attract customers. Unsold stock of e-bikes and e-scooters are suffocating the company. Fantic rode the post-COVID wave where electric bikes and scooters seem to have a bright future. But during the pandemic, e-bike sales exploded, reports motorradonline.de. But the market collapsed in Italy, where urban electric mobility failed to take off. The result? Warehouses full of unsold products, emptying the company's coffers. Electric scooters and bikes have suffocated liquidity, confirms Visordown.com. This scenario recalls the insolvency of KTM, which had also diversified into electric without anticipating the market turnaround. The situation's worsened with the repercussions of the insolvency of KTM in 2024. Sharing suppliers with the Austrian giant, Fantic suffered from advance payment demands imposed by schooled subcontractors who recovered only 30% of the debts from KTM. This is the problem here. Trust goes very quickly in all industries. KTM in a crazy amount of financial trouble. They never paid back a lot of their suppliers. So the suppliers of all of these parts in the huge supply chains that are required for building any kind of vehicle, they've all got spooked and lost their confidence and thought, there's no way we're going bankrupt with unpaying motorcycle brands. KTM have screwed us over here. We're not going to allow it for Fantic. So Fantic are paying the price for KTM not paying their debts. I'll get to more Fantic stuff later, but remember that thought. On now, a few friends that didn't want to get left behind. This is from Richard. One of my all-time favourite bikes was my 2015 Triumph Scrambler in a gorgeous RAF blue. I eventually found a sidecar and mated it to the Scrambler. This is where I discovered the utter bliss of taking my dogs with me everywhere on two wheels. Freddie, what a revelation. Think about it. Man's best friend and best machine mated together. No more guilt trips leaving the dogs at home. They took to it instantly. I'll be including these pics as I'm talking. And I have to say, just looking at these pics, these dogs look ridiculously at home on the motorbike, like they could just sit there all day. I lost my biking nerve just carrying on for biking for the first time after seeing a bad crash, so I bought a green Honda Trail 125, really not expecting too much from it. But I fell in love with the little postie bike. Trips to the store suddenly became mini adventures. I'd beg my wife to send me on errands, taking shortcuts off curbs, through back alleyways and so forth. I'm a teacher and I have summers off, and I even used the Honda to do DoorDash. I think that's delivery jobs in the USA. It was like playing a game and getting paid for it. My wife had enough of my shenanigans and made me stop doing food deliveries. There we go. Oh my God, that's brilliant, doing food deliveries on the little postie bike in the USA. My dogs were upset though with me as I had sold the sidecar, so it got me thinking, why couldn't I strap a milk crate onto the generous rack of the postie and then I could take my dogs with me? So I upgraded eventually my Honda Trail to a Vespa GTS 300 SS. It allows Bear and I to have a larger range to visit the local lakes and trails. Richard, there'll be people now genuinely looking at these pictures thinking, I've got a dog at home that I am desperate not to leave, and here's the solution. It's brilliant to see that, Richard. On now to Vince and a motorcycle's best friend. So we're going from a man's best friend to a motorcycle's best friend. A scooter. Freddie, scooters are only underrated by those who haven't tried them. I used to be a 100% dyed-in-the-wool motorcyclist and wouldn't ever consider a scooter. To save my Ducati, my winter hack was a Honda CG 125 because it was still a real bike. Then I rode a Cabellero as a courtesy bike, and I was instantly converted by this little scooter. I still have the Ducati, but now have 3 Cabelleros, and I've just bought a new Lambretta 350. So I've got the best of both worlds. I didn't plan it, but it turned out that the colours on the Lambretta are virtually identical to the Ducatis, even down to the pearl in the white. Obviously, this is a match made in heaven. The story of the new Lambrettas rather does mirror that of BSA, in that the brand has recently been resurrected following the sale of the name and design rights to a new owner. Also, like BSA, they are perhaps unsurprisingly also manufactured in Asia. That's Thailand, I believe. I can't fault the quality though. Vince, that is a stunningly good pair. And I'm not going to talk about Lambretta, Vince, because I'm delighted you brought this up. Hold your breath, everyone. Something in and around that space is coming soon. I will say no more. So Vince, I'm delighted to hear from you with that. Fine, fine pairing. On now to Austria and appreciating the simpler things. For my 30th birthday, I decided to buy a Royal Enfield Classic 350. It was the first motorcycle I'd purchased in years, since in the meantime my wife and I were blessed with 2 wonderful children. After this long break, the Classic 350 brought back that pure motorcycle feeling that I'd been missing. 2 years later, I felt ready to move up and I added a Suzuki V-Strom 650 beside my Classic 350. I took it on some longer tours and it was a wonderful bike, but over time I started to feel that it was just too big, too bulky and too heavy. I also missed that circular headlamp and classic look. So I sold it and I just went back to enjoying the Classic 350. But then another year passed and once again I had the urge for a big, strong motorcycle. This time I bought a BMW R1200R, big beast. But after not even 2 months, reality again set in. It was too heavy, too powerful, too fast. I felt more respect, almost fear, when riding it. And I realised it was simply too much motorcycle for me. So I sold it again, and again I returned to my little Royal Enfield. Besides my passion for motorcycles, I also work as a police officer. And in my job, I'm often confronted with crime and situations that most people are fortunate enough to never witness. Some of my colleagues cope with therapy sessions or with a few too many drinks in the evening. Personally, I find the greatest peace when I ride my single cylinder through the mountains of Austria. It makes me forget the world around me like nothing else can. And through this journey, I've learned to truly appreciate the small, fine details of my Enfield. For me, the Classic 350 has become the best form of therapy that I could ask for. And over the years, I've discovered that often it's the little things that bring the greatest joy. And that's Steve over in Austria. Steve, you've perfectly summed it up there. It's meditation. On now to a little bit more meditation from Mark and Sangeeta over in the Isle of Wight. Oh, Mark and Sangeeta, I met them at the DGR in Bishop Stortford this year. Lovely couple. And a fine first trip. Freddie, we decided to opt for the Isle of Wight as our first trip. We left London early to Southampton and then a short but extremely exciting ferry crossing across to Cowes. The Bonneville performed as I expected, didn't miss a beat, and took everything that was given, with plenty of admirers along the way. Fully loaded panniers and my partner pillion, round trip 383 miles, and a total of a 3-day adventure. We picked the right weekend as 5,000, what is this event? 5,000 scooters had their annual rally, and to top it all, the powerboat race at Cowes Harbour, which was thrilling. This made our adventure even more exciting. Glorious weather, amazing pothole-free sweeping roads throughout the incredible island, and great views at every turn. We loved it so much, we're already planning for southern Spain or France next year. That's Mark and Sangeeta. I remember when I was speaking to Mark and Sangeeta at the DGR, they weren't sure what it would be like touring 2 up on a Bonneville T100. So I'm delighted you liked it so much. You're planning another one. That's brilliant. I was out camping with Darcy and the old man last week, and I pulled over to have some breakfast and a coffee. And I met a father and son duo, and they had both just bought brand new 2025 Triumphs. One was a Scrambler 900, the other one was a Bonneville T100. And I believe it's Ray, apologies if you're watching and it's not Ray. Ray, the father, had the T100 and he said it's averaging 72 miles per gallon. To put that into some perspective, my Bonneville averages 45 miles per gallon. That is a gigantic increase in economy. 45 to 72, huge. And I would say, and this is of course subjective, I would say the new Bonnevilles are even better looking than my one. So you get even improved looks. Everything's just a little better. And the fact that you get hugely more fuel economy is a massive bonus. Bike of the week. Remember I said hold that thought about Fantic, because this is a motorcycle company, look, that is in trouble. But it's not the motorcycle's fault this company's in trouble. It's the e-bikes that currently are dragging down the motorbikes. That's currently what's happening. So I'm going to read out as a bike of the week one of the Fantic motorcycles. Hopefully this is the bike that will save the company and stand it in good stead for the coming years. This is from João over in Portugal. Freddie, I was considering buying a Royal Enfield at my local shop, but they decided to convince me to buy a Fantic, as I was looking for a bike with a bit less weight. So with that, I got my Fantic Caballero 500 Scrambler in red, and I'm very happy. It's 500cc, 150 horsepower without fuel. It's about 170 fully fueled up. I'm 47 years old, and this is exactly what I want. Small, light, and power to ride alone, and also with my wife too. João, I'm sure I'm saying Portugal, you must be in Portugal. With a name like João, great to hear from you, and a stunning looking bike. I really like these. I'm now going to tell you a big bit of news from Fantic that may make you even more keen to buy this Caballero. I say Caballero 500, it may be Cabellero 500 because it's Italian. Someone let me know, is it Caballero or Caballero? Maybe Caballero, apologies for my pronunciation here. I will be corrected, I'm sure. So it's a lightweight retro. Just the fact I'm saying lightweight retro is a bit of a revelation itself, because retros usually are the opposite of lightweight. They're usually extremely heavy motorcycles that work off nostalgia and style over and above lightness and dynamism. This Fantic is very, very different. 150 kilos dry weight for 500cc is impressive for such a good looking bike. So 500cc, 150 horsepower, single cylinder 500cc engine with about 44 horsepower. This is where things get really, really interesting. Have a listen to this. This is on Fantic's website. So the new 460cc single-cylinder engine by Fantic Motor, listen to this, entirely designed, developed and assembled in Italy at Motori Minarelli. Everything, start to finish, design, development, motor, the rest of the bike, done in Italy. This is a proper Italian-made motorbike. So the bikes have always been assembled in Italy. But, and here's the key, prior to 2025, the engines were built by Chinese brand from Zhongzhen. So the bike was assembled in Italy, but they bought the engines from a Chinese manufacturer. So they always had Chinese engines in them until this very year. Then what happened is Fantic decided to bring their engine building back to Italy. From 2025, from this year, the engines went from 449cc, that's the Chinese built engine, to a 463cc capacity. That's the Italian-built engines. So these new Fantics are owned by an Italian umbrella company called Motori Minarelli, and they're also built in Italy. And that means the entire process, Italian company owns the brand, and the bikes are built in Italy. That's pretty impressive, actually. I have to say, I take my hat off to Fantic for that. That's something to be very, very proud of. So how much for one of these brand new Fantic Caballero or Caballero 500 Scramblers do you have to pay to get one? So if you want one with the older 449cc Chinese built engine, and they're still really good bikes, I don't want to just brush it off and say you need one with the Italian engine. You don't. The old ones are excellent bikes, and in no way at all should you be put off by these Chinese-built engines, because they're very good. But it's an interesting extra bit here to add that if you're looking for one of these Italian-built brand new engines, the new ones, there will be some companies, some sales rooms that are selling still the old stock and selling them as new bikes to get rid of the old stock. And they'll want to do this before they start selling the new stock of bikes with the 463cc engine. So the easiest way to tell if you're looking, 449cc is the Chinese-built engine, and the brand new one is the 463cc. And it will pop up on any advert like this, 463, 449. So £4,500 you can get the older model for, and if you want one of these absolutely brand new ones, you need to pay about £6,300. But I think £6,300 for an Italian-built 500cc, beautifully styled motorbike, I think that's fantastic value. I almost don't know how Fantic are doing it at that price. And It's a brand that should be supported because, look, they're in some trouble now. This could be the bike to save Fantic, and I really, really hope it is. So I'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Really hope you enjoyed the episode. I'll see you all in the next one.